PC, so we will be using loadless timers. The loading screens vary, of course, between people's computers, depending on your hardware. So usually in this tournament, the two racers have been agreeing to play on the same language. I'm not sure why.
Everything that lives is designed to end.
Sort this out beforehand.
We are
Ice is
perpetually
playing on
trapped
Japanese, and Unity's
in a
playing
never-ending
on
spiral
English.
of life and death. Is this a curse?
Japanese
some
text
kind
is
of
actually
punishment?
faster on the loading screens.
I often
It's
think
not
about the God
faster
who blessed us
in-game,
with this
so
cryptic puzzle, and wonder if we'll ever have the chance
it's
to
not
kill
like
him.
any sort of loadless time game, but Ice will be a little bit ahead real
This is
time.
Command. Yorha Squadron, come in.
2B here. All units have penetrated the stratosphere. Autopilot systems green
It
across
looks
the
like
board.
This is Operator 6-0. All units confirmed.
We've passed the 50-kilometer threshold and are proceeding toward the target.
Understood. Once you reach their anti-air defenses, proceed to manual attack formation. Then destroy the Goliath-class unit by any means necessary, and gather what data you can.
Understood. 12H down. All units activate manual mode and rely on visuals to evade.
Already engaged. Free movement unlocked.
Origin point of long-range lasers confirmed.
we're just trying to get this timer issue sorted out real quick.
11B, down. Our HO229 cancelers are ineffective.
Alert. Enemy unit sighted ahead.
Requesting permission to engage.
Permission granted.
Alright, so for the first about minute, 45 seconds or so, you actually can't do any sort of movement. You're completely stuck just watching basically a little intro cinematic. But now we do have to take out these waves of these machine flyers as quickly as possible.
1D down. Assuming captain's duties.
Just typical SpongeBob stuff. You want to kill the last enemy in the wave as quickly as possible so that the next wave can begin.
Multiple surrounding enemy area units.
A little bit of an
confirmed.
AI manipulation there from
Requesting
Icefire.
permission to
He sort of
assume
let
mobile
the
Permission granted.
AI ship there shoot the flyers on the left side while he took out the ones on the right. That can be a little tricky. Sometimes the AI will decide to move a little bit towards you or just stop shooting. Now we just have a bit of a perspective change. A little bit sort of a 2.5D sort of thing. Your controls do change a bit when you're in this sort of like Gundam mode.
4B down.
You have light and heavy kind of sword attacks.
2B
The
to
heavy attack
Operator
sends
6-0.
out a projectile
All
that
allied
will
units
travel
down.
the length of the
operation
screen.
is compromised.
You
Awaiting
don't.
further orders.
It's not really used too many
Operator
places because it has a
2B.
very
We need
long
you to rendezvous with Unit 9S and
startup
begin
time
gathering
and
data on
cooldown.
the local terrain.
So you'll
Understood.
mostly just see people spamming light attacks. And then now we'll have a little bit of sort of a side-scrolling shmup section here. Same thing as before. Heavy attacks in this sort of, what's it called, setup, this side-scrolling setup. Very, very strong. Hitbox stays out for a long time and it's very, very big. So far they've only been dealing with these flyer enemies, but now we have sort of sort of like the boss of this section. It's what we call a
I'm
fidget
aware of
spinner. It has one attack that it can choose to do where it just spins around. Really hard to deal with. It forces you to kind of stay farther away, or you're going to take a bunch of damage, or you're going to just basically have to wait for it to stop doing that attack before you can do anything. So we always try to take out those as soon as possible, or as quickly as possible. So coming in here to the sort of standard 3D hack and slash portion of the game.
Is that our target?
Sort of the basis of combat is doing a dash followed by a heavy attack with the short sword in your heavy slot. It will throw out the short sword that spins around. It hits several times. I'm not sure how many, probably around 10 or so, but each hit does probably about 5 times normal damage. That's what we refer to as damage glitch or damage exploit. Just for whatever reason, that particular attack does a ton of damage.
Cup, no.
Oh,
Alright.
So looks like Unity is a little ahead here. But coming up here to sort of the first skip that requires some aerial movement.
2B, ma'am?
What is it?
I was going to send you the
Getting
map
up on
data I
top of
collected
this
earlier.
crane.
Do it.
Exit confirmed closed.
So open.
You're intended to do some other stuff, but luckily it's pretty easy to get up on top of that and skip doing some intended little quest stuff or whatever it is that you're supposed to do. So Ice trying to kind of corral these flyers together so that he can just shoot a laser at the group and take out as many as he can. It's not really consistent to have them always sort of group up in the same way or fly the same way. You just kind of really just kind of have to kind of improvise there. And then bridge skip, hardest skip in prologue. Ice gets it first try. Those inputs that you have to do there are very, very tight. And you have to delay your lift as soon as possible, which is the attack that you start off with, where you jump and then press heavy attack right after, and it's sort of like a lift or uppercut attack that will launch.
I know.
Or yeah, a launcher. That's what the word I was looking for. It's what's referred to as a launcher. But it's more useful for skips and gaining height than it is in combat in terms of speed. And then taking out these shield bipeds here, they can be a bit tricky. Looks like both the racers not having too much of an issue. And then trying to line up just these projectile stubbies to take out as many as possible with a single
I
laser.
surveyed the entire factory, but couldn't find anything resembling our target.
Maybe they...
So
I don't know,
our
moved it
pod,
somewhere?
which can shoot a bunch of bullets and gives us access to a few other attacks, has this special thing called a pod program.
There should be another
We
facility
start with the
across that
laser
bridge.
in this run,
It's a bit of a
and
hike, but should we check
in
it out?
an A ending, we just stick with the laser the entire
It's not like
time. We don't
command to get a
bother
location wrong.
buying
I guess
any
even
other
they get bad
ones.
intel from time to time, huh?
Lasers does a pretty decent. It does decent damage.
I wouldn't bet on
And
that.
really, the fact that if you hold down the pod program button,
High power jamming detected.
you get
No
like
response from
a slow
long-range
motion effect for
communications.
everything around
Doesn't
you.
matter. I'll
That
just take
is pretty useful for sort of keeping enemies still and like trying to kind of slow bosses down and try and slow them down enough just so, say, they only do one attack cycle instead of two. And looks like both guys did use a melee buff. You can also do that section without using a melee buff, but it's a bit. It requires you to throw out some of those spinning swords as the saw is moving across the ground. But not a huge time difference. So now we are on the boss called Angles. This section, all that's required is to let a certain amount of time pass until the cutscene starts. However, we do need to deal damage to Angles, so just when he does these punch attacks, you'll just see these guys just throwing out damage pushes. Maybe sometimes using slow-mo as well, just to keep the arms on the ground for a longer period of time. But it's not something that you have to do. You do have plenty of time to damage him down to threshold. But mostly it's just something to do, sort of practice practice your slow-mo combat.
I'm going to destroy.
While you're waiting for this
Right.
cutscene.
I'll provide support.
So after this cutscene, Angles can do one of 6 attacks, and what Icefire got on his screen, what we call punches, obviously, is actually the slowest one that you can get by far. So Ice losing around 20 seconds just due to bad luck. So Unity will take the lead here. Still in the prologue section, so not a big deal. We'll switch over to Unity's audio here. Alright, so Angles will sort of dive down in the water, come up and breaks a portion of this bridge off. Then he'll do a punch and repeat that one more time. So we're just waiting for him to just go through the motions before another cutscene starts.
Packing in.
Angles is going to shoot some missiles at us, and 9S is going to send them back at him.
9S black box signal detected. No response to...
So coming up here, we'll see the first instance of what we call a double lift. If you do a lift into a slope, it will allow you to do a second lift because I suppose you touched the ground technically after you did the first lift. Basically, lets us have 3 jumps, which is very useful for a lot of skips. Both of them getting a first try, pretty good. And then coming up here to what we call ninjas. The stubbies, very, very evasive. When you dash towards them to attack, they will jump backwards a lot of the time and just dodge your spinning sword. Pretty decent ninjas section there for both guys. It is possible to just throw out a damage glitch, then do a laser and take out all of them that way, but it is pretty tricky. Then so now we're in the flight suit again, just dealing more damage to Angles here, using pod fire and spamming heavy attacks while we wait for this dialogue here to finish. The goal here is to have Angles be finishing up an attack right as 2B says, "I told you to shut up." He has to finish whatever animation he's doing before he can do the scripted punch that will progress the fight. So unfortunately for Unity, looks like Angles started a melee attack as soon as 2B said that dialogue. So a little bit of a time loss.
Enemy unit. Marking weak point.
We'll see what Ice gets here. He could save some time here just from that. Looks like he did.
Affirmative. Infiltrating
Can't tell for sure.
Behavior table adjusted. Balance controls overridden. Enemy unit subjugation complete.
And then we're gonna steal Engel's arm. We have to hit him 3 times. And that's it for prologue. And after these heavy attacks, we're going to press the heavy attack button and then press the evade button, and that will allow us to swing the arm again immediately. So now we're back in the bunker, and this movement here, you'll see a dash followed by a punch, and that's just, at this point in the game, the fastest way of movement. It's slightly faster than chaining dashes like you see on Icefire screen, but it is a little more difficult to maintain that rhythm, because if you make a mistake, then you sort of lose all the time that you gained from the last 5 or 6 dash punches. You know, if you just mess one up, you're at the same speed as dash chaining, if not slower.
All right.
So now 9S is going to force us to set up some of our controls, set up brightness, voice volume, and enable self-destruct, which we did not have access to in the prologue. That would actually make bridge skip a lot easier if we had access to self-destruct in prologue, but we do not. But luckily for the rest of the game, we do have self-destruct, and we'll see that used in many places.
There's
basically everywhere, not only in this category, but it's important for every single category. A lot of situations where it's very useful. It's like we'll see if Unity doing a heavy attack right before he walked into a dialogue trigger. If you just sort of run into a dialogue trigger, the game will force to be into this very slow walking state while the dialogue is playing. And we obviously want to avoid slow movement whenever possible, so you'll see people jumping over those dialogue triggers or doing an attack animation through them. A lot of the dash and then heavy attacks have a forced run afterwards, so they'll do the attack and then they'll start running briefly. So it's not only just the distance covered from the attack, it's also the sort of the animation after the attack as well.
You're going to have
can
some
be
new
useful.
weaponry installed from here on out. I'll put up instructions for you. Make sure to commit them to memory.
Roger.
And another little short shmup section here before we get to the city, which is where we're going to spend. It's basically the main hub for all of the ending. So at the end of the prologue shmup, we had 1 fidget spinner, and this one we're going to have 2. Unity is going to use pod program to take out the first one. Unfortunately, the second one started spinning. That's what I mentioned in prologue. You have to sort of give it some space, wait for it to finish attacking before you can get close to it, so that you can sort of hit all of its hurt boxes with your light attacks. It can also be a little scary because they don't have any recovery items at this point, and dying at this point in the run is very, very bad. See Ice at about half health from that, and I didn't see where Unity is. About a little over 3/4.
Proceed to target location.
So now he's just going to plunge off of this roof. Plunging is very useful for movement as well. You go downward at a 45-degree angle very, very quickly.
We've been seeing more and more enemies like
You'll
this
see
lately.
that
They just stand there and stare
used in
into
a lot of
space.
places. It's
pretty weird.
very, very useful for saving time. Gives you a basic, like an exact straight line, essentially.
So this is the
as long as you can
resistance
aim
camp,
it
huh?
correctly.
We should probably go talk to their leader first thing.
Target location data obtained. Marking on map.
So now they're going to have to pick up a few fetch quests here. There's a weapon trader quest and a item trader quest. By doing the weapon trader quest, we do get the materials required to upgrade our weapon from level 1 to level 2. After prologue, the game starts you off with only the short sword. Lucky for us, that's the best weapon type in the game. Overall, definitely for combat. It's good for horizontal, for keeping, covering distance in the air as well as getting vertical distance.
That should be enough.
So upgrading that to level 2 will give us a bit of an attack speed increase. So then instead of doing this dash punching, they'll be able to do a dash and then a heavy attack, which is just slightly faster than the dash punching. And it's a lot easier than the dash punching too. You're not, the rhythm isn't quite as fast. Which makes it easier.
Okay,
Unity getting
that's
trolled a
everything
bit
a supply
there.
trader asked
Those
for.
quest drops can take some kind of random angles flying out of the
These chores are a real pain in the butt,
exploding
huh?
machine. Sometimes it can, like you saw there, land on top of that concrete, or it can land it in a bush, and you kind of have to hunt around for it.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in ISIS situation where you have low health, so you're in this forced sort of grayscale mode, and then it's even harder to see those quest items. So now Unity is going to turn in the weapon quest, upgrade his weapon. And then turn in the supply trader quest. Then, now that those are out of the way, he can talk to Anemone and
Pod 042 to
continue
operator.
with the main story mission. We have to go travel out to the desert.
Understood, 042. Placing marker on target. The desert heat is going to make resupply efforts difficult, 2B. Please make sure you're
And now
ready
you see
before
Unity
go.
doing the dash swings instead of the dash punches. Just doing a double jump plunge back over the barrier to the area that he was collecting the items in before, and just trying to get to desert as quickly as possible. There are a lot of hills and a lot of buildings and then barriers in this area, so it can be a little tricky to take the optimal route here. Oh, Unity, unfortunately, so there is a frame during your dash in the air where if you press the heavy attack button to do a plunge, you'll actually be in an be in a grounded state for one frame, and you'll do the grounded heavy attack instead. So that's what happened there when he was trying to plunge off the building. Some just really unlucky. Hitting that one frame's pretty difficult.
Map data obtained from bunker.
And then stopping there at the desert camp to buy some recoveries and some
Map
buffs.
data, huh?
Buy
It's hard to
an
get
animal
accurate
bait for
pictures
later,
on this.
and buy a
My
resilience
satellite
ship.
resolution isn't so
The
high.
resilience ship
Hopefully
is
they
going to be
deploy some new
used
satellites soon.
later on
A
before the
general idea
forest.
is good enough.
Resilience
You don't let anything
prevents
get in
you
your
from
way,
being
do you?
staggered when you're hit by enemies when you have more than 80% HP. So we will equip that and then just heal as soon as we take any damage at all, so we can just throw out spinning swords without having to worry about enemies hitting us and interrupting the animations. And then there is a clip out of bounds
Who opens a sealed gate with
between that,
explosives?
so like the
There's
wall and the
gotta be an easier
teleporter,
way, right?
just to make it more direct beeline to this barrier here, which you can also clip out of bounds by and avoid dealing with Jackass. And then Unity staying out of bounds He had to grab a trigger near the tunnel and then plunge back away to skip the desert discovery cutscene, but progress the sort of required triggers along the way. He doesn't want to clip back in bounds, but you just want to get close enough that you do touch the trigger. Ice doing it as well.
Careful.
So taking a bit of a detour here to pick up Pod C. 2 pods means 2 lasers. And then we see our friend Don Burrows here. We're going to have to chase him through the desert. But one thing we could do is when he goes to burrow, really unlucky for Unity that he waited so long before burrowing. God, that had to have been at least like 8 or 10 seconds.
What's that?
You might see it happen a bit faster here on Icy's screen. Yeah, plunging a lot sooner. What looks like he was behind the rock, so I just couldn't really see him too well. Usually we try and plunge against that rock wall there. There are a lot of surfaces, walls, or whatever, that if you plunge against them, you just sort of glide along them. I believe you'll see that later somewhere. And then if you plunge at a certain angle into this one apartment building, we can actually clip out of bounds and skip having to go through this housing district. We would just be chasing that machine through there and watching a couple cutscenes. But going out of bounds, we can go over here and pick up a required trigger in the tunnel inbounds above us, and then make it over to this platform to start this fight with the machines in the pit before we find Adam and fight him.
Don't listen to them, Tubi.
Unity changing weapon set 1 to be the same as weapon set 2, so now in both of his weapon sets he has the short sword and the heavy slot, so now he can throw out a spinning sword, change weapon sets, and throw out another one. And the first one doesn't respawn when you change weapon sets, so it just gives you higher DPS. And then this is a timed section here. We have to wait a certain amount of time for the next cutscene to play. So in the meantime, the goal is just to kill as many machines as possible for experience and plug-in chips. We're looking to get as good of crit chips as we can possibly find. So the enemies here have a chance to drop critical chips. There's no base critical % chance in this game. We have to have plug-in chips in order to actually have access to critical hits. And critical hits do 5 times damage in this, so very, very important in combat, especially on boss fights. So coming up here to Adam, if Unity can deal enough damage here in a short amount of time, he can actually skip a little mini cutscene here. Let's see if he gets it or not. Unfortunately, not able. That's the cutscene that it is possible to skip. Not a huge time save, but definitely something that you want to go for. Looks like Ice not getting it either. So now we're going to charge up this pod laser. And when you charge up the pod laser long enough, the second one will also appear. So when you release the button, you get a double laser. And there's an interesting thing where if you have pod A equipped and you do that, you'll get the double laser but Pod C will not be put on cooldown. So by getting Pod C, we effectively get access to 3 lasers in quick succession rather than just 1.
Come on, through that hole.
Looks like Ice making up a little bit of time on that fight there. Looks like just slightly cleaner Adam fight there. Adam is a pretty tough boss. It's he's one of the harder bosses, I think,
What the hell
in
just
A
happened?
ending. So
I've never seen a
kind
machine like
of
that
normal
before.
to
We
have
better report this
a
to
little bit of
command.
trouble with him.
Let's
He has a
look
lot
to
of
an area with
attacks
better
that he
reception
can
so we
choose
can
from,
contact
and
command.
some of them can lose you some time. So making our way out of the pit, both these guys are going to push this box. One push and then part of a second push, and then they're going to pod launch and try and clip out of bounds. Cancel that pod launch with a dodge to stay out of bounds. It's like both of them getting the out of bounds fairly quickly. Ice, unfortunately, falling off the invisible wall, having to wait for a void out and respawn. Not a big deal. And then they're going to get in the radius of that transporter that they activated earlier and then do a save and load. If you try to make it into the radius while staying inbound, you'll hit a dialogue trigger first, and you cannot save during while that dialogue's playing. So by going out of bounds, we can just go straight to make it straight to the save point radius and just do that. Much faster loadless, and it's also a bit faster real time as well.
2B, 9S. We've lost contact with several Yorha units that were on their way to the surface. Their black boxes are online, so we presume they're still alive. We've tracked the location of their signals, so I need all Yorha units on the surface to head over and investigate.
Yeah, so it looks like Unity is about 15 seconds
End
ahead at this
transmission.
point.
I heard something about that back at the resistance camp.
Target location confirmed. I'm worried about the other androids. Looks like our surface route.
Still another hour left,
So,
so
2B, those machines out in the desert look just like androids, right?
multiple
Right.
lead changes
But we
definitely
androids were
possible
modeled
depending
after
on
our
what
human
happens here.
creators. So why would machines try to look like us?
Unity showing off a
There's
plunge
no
into a
point trying to work
self-destruct
out
just
unsolvable
to
problems.
get down
I
into the
suppose.
sewers as fast as possible. Very, very cool looking strat. Very fast as well. So when we're climbing ladders, we always want to avoid the sort of dismounting from the ladder at the top animation.
What are
So
those?
what you'll see people do is drop off of the ladder and then do a lift and then a like heavy
This is
jump, heavy
weird.
dash. And both guys just getting enough height to get over a cutscene trigger saves about 2 seconds or so, maybe less. Unity got the 1 frame of the aerial dash where it lets you do the grounded heavy attack instead of the plunge, so a bit unlucky there. He still had enough had enough height and distance to make it over the trigger, so not an issue. Doing another out of bounds
Really think it's a
here
good idea to leave
just to
that
make a more
tank behind?
direct
If they aren't hostile, fighting them is a waste
path
of time.
to the roller coaster.
What's this?
Analysis. It is a device that propels humans on rails at high speeds for the purposes of amusement. It was commonly referred to as a
Trying
roller
to
coaster.
Humans sure
basically
are
get on the
strange
roller coaster
creatures.
as fast as possible. Unity was just a little early, so maybe lost like a second there by having to land and jump on it again.
Hey, 2B,
Yes?
people who know me well usually call me Nines. So,
Oh.
so what do you think?
Oh.
I mean,
So we have
if you wanna
this
call me
auto
Nines,
scroller
it's totally
coaster.
okay.
I'm good.
We're going to ride this and get off at the boss room for Au revoir. So one thing just to keep an eye out for is if either one of these guys get level 8 when they're on the roller coaster here. Looks like Unity did not. Looks like Ice didn't either, I believe. It's not required to be level 8 here, but it does make it a bit easier to put a lot of damage on this boss quickly in order to sort of skip the first attack cycle that she would normally do. So they're just going to buff up and just throw out damage glitches, damage her down to threshold so she doesn't move out very far. Ooh. Yeah, so you want to damage her down to threshold at a certain point so that when she does that saw attack, she will stay near the stage or come near the stage, because once she is damaged, she has to get back on the stage. So her being as close to the stage as possible is good.
It'll affect our bodies as well.
Are we seriously being attacked with dead androids?
So now we have these like corrupted androids or hacked androids that we have to take out before we can fight Bavara herself again. This wave right here can be tricky. The camera angle is very wonky, and they send out their shockwaves attacks. Unity manages to avoid that one. Those will put you in a hacking minigame that loses about 6 or 7 seconds, so nicely done by Unity. Ice going through the same section here. The rest of this phase, he's just trying to damage her down to threshold. She's not at threshold quite yet, I don't think, on Unity's client? Okay, never mind, looks like she was.
Saturation attack triggered by enemy consciousness.
Everything's fine. And then, after the level up, a self-destruct to set up a death warp a bit later. And we see Ice at the same point. Choosing the buff up here.
What is it?
That machine had some pretty weird things to say, huh? It's almost like it had actual emotion.
Not really much of a time difference between buffing and not buffing there.
Yeah,
accessing the menu probably costs you about 2 seconds, but you also do more damage, so you might just save those or gain those 2 seconds back. Not a huge deal. Unity getting a some small recoveries. He's going to use one of them so that he has access to self-destruct again. When you're at only 1 HP, you cannot use self-destruct, so getting a small recovery drop from those androids in there will allow him to use self-destruct right here. If he needs it, makes it up without self-destruct. Very nice. We'll see if Ice checks for a small recovery. So talking to the peaceful flying machine,
So why don't the machines or the
it
aliens
doesn't matter which
attack
option
the
you
bunker
select there,
directly?
you still have to
They
go to
originally
Pascal's
came here from outer
village.
space, right?
well, there are a few theories about that, but no one knows for sure. Hard to tell what an alien is thinking, you know?
So now we've discovered Pascal's village,
They all have
village of
white
machines that
Looks
have
like they really don't
disconnected
wanna
from the
fight.
network and actually cooperate with the resistance camp, much to the shock of 2B and 9S. All machines are evil and not capable of thought, so bit of a surprise to find Pascal's village here. But anyway, just grabbing something from Pascal, taking it back to Anemone. Unity doing a plunge, which he canceled with a self-destruct. When you use self-destruct, it will cancel whatever you're doing, but you will maintain momentum. So do a plunge to get the speed, and then do a self-destruct to get rid of the sword hitbox. Makes it a lot easier to clip between that box and the wall.
Honestly,
Ice didn't use a small recovery or didn't get one, so he's just going to have to straight up plunge at the right angle. There we go.
I don't think I can
Plunging
stand
without
spending
the
one more
SD
day in
is
bunker.
significantly more difficult.
You leaving
But
would be bad for me.
I think Ice got a
It would
third
affect
try,
mission
so that's pretty good.
efficiency.
And Unity using that animal bait to get to ride an animal over to the resistance camp, getting a boar and doing some what we call boar hopping. It's actually the fastest animal movement that we have access to. It's faster than just sprinting with the boar. And then picking up another item from Anemone to take back to Pascal.
Believe we're not a threat?
Unity is just going to shoot this boar here. It ran away from him at first, which is kind of unfortunate, but didn't lose too much time there. I'm not sure what happened to Ice. I wasn't looking. Looks like he got off the animal really, really early, if he even got on one. Correct me if I'm wrong here.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Didn't quite see what happened there. So if Ice doesn't have an animal there, he's going to have to go down
What's that noise?
and aggro one of these
Send emergency
stubbies
transmission from
and
the
have them
bunker.
hit him.
We're reading a Goliath-class
There we go.
enemy inside the city ruins.
So just
Looks like
a
there are
death
ton of
warp
other
to go back to
machines there
Pascal's
with it.
village
All
since
Yorha units
that's the
should
last
proceed
place that
and
we
engage
saved.
immediately.
A Goliath? This was a trap. I knew it.
I promise.
And then from here, they'll just be making their way to some flight units that are on top of a building. There are a few angles. The big boss from Prologue in the city, and they're going to have to deal with those two.
We probably shouldn't get near that guy's feet. Yeah, no. Let's find another route. The flight units should be on the roof of that building up ahead. It'll be dangerous, but we're not going anywhere unless we pass through that Goliath's legs. We should be careful.
And then here we are forced to climb this very, very long ladder. Have to do about 13 of these jump climbs, jump off, and do a lift to get up top. And if he times it right, he can do a double jump, squeeze to the wall. Not able to get it, so he'll have to do a backup here. He's trying to get a double lift off of that sloped rock and then make it over the invisible wall,
Make sure to approach at low altitude.
so we don't have to defeat this Ingalls here by the building at all. We could just get straight in the flight units and go deal with this the second one. We'll see if Ice can get the double jump strat here. Looks like he does get it. Saved a little bit of time relative to Unity there. So now that Unity is on, this Ingalls is going to buff up and stay right on Ingalls' right shoulder and use 2 pod programs. The missiles come out in a circle around you, but due to Ingalls' hitbox, if you're in that specific spot, all of the missiles will hit him. Very useful. And then we see Ice taking out Ingalls as well.
Yorha, this is your commander. For the first time in centuries, we've intercepted a signal.
So it looks like
belonging
Ice
to the
did not get a level up
These are the
after
creatures
killing
that are in
Ingalls,
direct
which is
command of the
a
machine
little
life forms on
strange.
this planet. If we can destroy
not
them, we
not
can
sure if
end
I've
this
seen that
long and
before.
arduous war
See,
once and for all.
Unity
Our
level 10
intel
here.
team is
But it seems to be
Ice only
underground.
level 9.
Like way underground.
Guess we'll see once we get there. If we're lucky.
You're not much for plans, are you?
If I had to
2B?
guess, I'd say at this point he has absolutely no hope of reaching level 20. I could be wrong, but I think at this point he's already lost too much.
Look at all these
Lost
dead
out on too much
machines.
potential
Seems like they've been here
experience.
for a long time.
What is this place?
I don't know. There's nothing like it in the database.
And then arriving at the alien spaceship, they're going to have to wait out a lot of Adam dialogue here. Adam talks a lot in this
My
run.
name is Adam.
Unfortunately, all we can do here is kill Eve one time to get some experience and a level up. Then after that,
Wiped out.
while we're waiting for Adam to finish talking, we
Perhaps we'll
can
wipe out the androids next.
actually
Machines are weapons
use a
capable of
counterattack on
evolution.
one of Eve's
We can
attacks to
grow.
get enough height
We
to
can become
get out of this arena
aware.
here and then go back into the
Eventually,
tunnel
the intelligence
that we
within
took
our
to
network began to surpass that
take
of
out
our
some other
creators.
take out the
You'd probably be
machines
surprised
in there
how
for experience and to get them out of the way.
Destroyed your own creators.
And we can also
Oh,
pick up
there's no need
some
to
items
fret.
that are required to upgrade
They were simple,
the short sword
infantile,
from level 2 to level
almost
3.
like
We'll
plants.
see what they do
They
here,
held no value to us.
if they
but the
go
humans
for
were.
all of that or any of that.
Now they are interesting
Why that?
because they are an enigma. They killed uncountable numbers of their own kind.
So Unity's going to try
And
and
yet,
dodge one of these
it's
attacks,
fascinating, don't you think?
do a heavy attack counter, do another heavy attack while he's in the air, and then do your standard lift heavy, jump heavy, self-destruct heavy, dash to get enough height to get over this wall here. Having a little bit of trouble. Eve not really wanting to cooperate
Assist you with what?
very much either.
We need you to locate the humans on the moon and bring them to us. We will then
There we go.
dissect and analyze them
Manages to get enough
in
height
order to
and plunge
drag
over that
their
wall, and then
secrets forth into the
he
light.
has to
Surely you see the attraction
get
in
some more
this.
height to make it over another invisible wall so that he
We'd
can
never do
actually
that.
leave the spaceship
Can you
here.
believe this 2B? This guy's bonkers.
Yeah, you see Ice is already
Suppose
clipped
this
out.
concludes negotiations. The only remaining option is to destroy.
We'll see. Okay,
The
Unity
same
not
way
going
we
for the
destroyed
upgrade
these
materials for
pathetic
virtual
little aliens.
virtuous contract level 3. For the items that are required to upgrade the short sword again, 2 of them are like random drops. So even if you pick these up from the
Back this
chest
way
in the
again?
tunnel there, you're still not guaranteed anything.
Stop complaining.
Yeah.
2B, this is Operator 60. We now have an operational transporter in the city ruins. We're attempting to deploy them at other points as well.
About time we had access to them.
So since Unity did clear out a bunch of these machines here, he can
They
just
let
do
you
this
transfer your
dash
consciousness to a
swinging
temporary
movement
body back in the bunker.
without having to worry about his heavy attack auto-targeting any machines. And then heading back to bunker to talk to the commander. And then we will go to Pascal's village. We're going to do our second set of buys at the shop and then make our way to the forest. So in this category, there are like a lot of different places where you can choose to equip your plug-in chips. Some people do it right after doing the buying and selling. And then some people do it after defeating the 4 machines right before forest.
It's been a while.
I'll rest
I
if
like doing
feel
it after
like
the 4 machines because I think there is a chance that they can actually drop crit chips. And then I've seen some people equip way later in forest for some reason. So we'll see what they do here. I'm doing a partner NPC dialogue cancel there. If you talk to 9S and open up that dialogue and then walk into a dialogue trigger, it will cancel both of them out, and you get some nice time save from
we
skipping that dialogue.
Yes, 2B?
pass us.
You-
Where?
So then now Unity is going to sell some stuff first off, sell the small buffs that he bought at the desert camp that are left over, sell the machine cores. We get 4 machine cores from the bosses that we defeat. Each of those are worth 10k apiece, so those finance the rest of our stuff here. Unity topping off on medium recoveries, buying a bunch of large melee and range buffs, also buying some defensive buffs. He's going to equip his chips right now. He's going to do resilience and then as many criticals as he can. Looks like he got 3 critical plus 0 chips. Each critical plus 0 chip is 1% crit chance, so now he has 3% chance to get a critical hit on each hit of that spinning sword. And now trying to get enough height and distance to get over a cutscene. Looks like Ice got it as well. I wasn't paying attention to his side, but
Man, this job can be pretty rough sometimes, huh?
looks like he did get it. I don't think he equipped chips yet, but we'll see.
To be emotional, remember?
I think some of us are better at that than others. This must be the commercial structure Pascal was talking about. The record
looks like Unity about 10 seconds ahead here. Maybe a bit more if Ice hasn't equipped his chips yet. So we're going to do another partner dialogue cancel here. This one saves a lot of time. Ice having some menu issues here. Not sure what that was.
What the heck is the Forest King?
You're getting distracted.
Check this guy. He's just running away.
So if you saw Unity buff up, you'll notice that he used 4 buff items. Icefire only using 2. Wow, nice. They are at slightly different sections due to the text-to-language difference. Yeah, Ice choosing to equip here. So Unity pulling ahead even more, probably about 20 or 25 seconds ahead at this point. Didn't see what Icefire got. It's hard for me to recognize the Japanese in this preview stream here.
Here they come. Better keep your guard up.
I'm aware of how to fight. You just be careful.
I will, 2B.
So now both runners making their way through the forest to the castle where they're going to fight A2.
What is with these guys?
Don't listen to what they're
The
saying.
movement here in forests kind of deceptively tricky.
Castle?
It's hard to optimize all these rocks and slopes. You kind of want to find a pathing that keeps you on the ground without sort of dashing off of a ledge and having to wait for the the travel time falling from the ledge to the ground below it. You want to stay on the ground as much as possible. So finding sort of angles that let you dash down rocks instead of off of them, if that makes sense, is sort of a big part of the movement in this section. Unity doing what we call Rainbow Road there, doing a bunch of pod spins in order to get enough aerial distance to make it on top of that drawbridge. It's a pretty significant time save. Icefire choosing to do the older method where you do a plunge on this hill and then hold a self-destruct to go underneath the drawbridge, void out, and respawn there. Probably only like 4 seconds or so slower than doing what Unity did, but being as he is already behind, that's just going to widen the lead for Unity a bit more. Unity actually on pretty good pace at this point, doing a lift there and a pod launch just to get as close to the cradle as possible. Like I mentioned in right after prologue, there are these dialogue triggers where 2B is forced to walk very slowly. That's one of them where the slow walk trigger is very, very far away from the actual trigger to start the cutscene, so 2B has a lot of distance to cover, so that pod launch there is very important. So now we're on A2. One of the Carter bosses in A ending here. She has a lot of
Jeez.
options. She can
deserted us.
either just spam attacks, or she
Let's
can
go
choose
after her,
to
2B.
just go off screen. Looks like Unity having a decent fight there. She only ran away one time, which is pretty good. And then just getting enough height here to plunge over a invisible wall, so that we can take this transporter back here, back to Bascas Village, instead of jumping off the castle and having to wait out a bunch of dialogue. So we'll see how Ice's A2 fight is. Oh. So Unity gaining even more time on Ice here with his A2 fight. Ice needing to heal here, but I think getting stuck in a sort of
It'll be
counterattack loop there.
Let's stay sharp.
And Ice getting the plunge over that invisible wall first try. And then teleporting to Resistance Camp, they're going to do another out of bounds clip to get down to the flooded city or the shore.
Why did you ask Pascal about A2?
Huh?
It's not recommended to interface
So
with
there
machines
is
without consulting command.
one cutscene that they have to get that's
Thanks,
next
2B.
to a
Still,
transporter.
machines are the enemy.
So
Don't
they're
forget
going
it.
to have to
It's the source.
get that cutscene before they can go down to the shore. So we'll see Unity here jump between that box and that computer, and that will sort of let you hover there briefly, and the game will just let you clip out of bounds. From there you can just dash through the fence. A double plunge here, and he'll cancel that, do a pod spin and a heavy attack, which will get him close enough to the transporter to start the cutscene. Not sure what he's doing here. I think that actually loses time if you do those heavies and
Let's take
such
him
in
out
the
already
air
so I
instead
can
of
be
just
home in
falling
time
and
for
voiding
dinner.
out.
Androids don't need to bathe. As long as you perform regular
So it
cleaning
gets
and maintenance,
another
bathing is
plunge there
unnecessary.
to void out and respawn on the shore.
It still feels good.
Has to take out this big guy. That's the only time we see that enemy in this run. And then after taking out these two shield bipeds, you will have to deal with a fidget spinner. This one can be very, very tough. You want to get it taunted as soon as possible. Do some aerial attacks and a double laser. One more laser or just a plunge would finish it off here. Yeah, there we go. Lift will do the job, and then some shield stubbies. So, decent shore from Unity. Just making his way to the flight units to start the burn section. We'll see how Ice's fidget spinner here goes. He's going to do a pod launch into it before doing those aerial attacks, charging up a double laser here. Then he'll use one more laser. Almost kills it. There we go. Just needed a bit more pod fire. Sometimes, if that thing has a chance to get far enough away from you, it can be very, very hard to finish off if you don't have your lasers available. So it's very, very important to make sure it's taunted before you do the double lasers. Then now that we've started Grun, this first section that Unity is on here, you can save some time just by killing everything as soon as possible. But once he leaves this section, it's basically just an auto-scroller. So now I guess, well, I'm gonna have a drink of water first before I mention the bounty stuff.
Attention, this is Carrier Blue Ridge 2. Requesting support from any friendly units in range. We've come under
Now at this
heavy
point,
fire from the
Unity's
enemy.
starting
Our
the
escort ship has taken
what's
damage and is
basically,
unable to
for the most
engage.
part, an auto-scroller
We're
here.
currently resisting with all remaining support fighters but we can't hold them off for long.
So the NieR Automata community, we have a bounty to find a way to skip this section. The bounty is currently at $2,200, as well as a homemade curry pizza and a caffeinated alcoholic beverage. So $2,200 if you can find a way to skip this section in this category.
I'm picking up a large-scale enemy inbound. Looks to be 2.8 clicks southwest of us.
Unity starting this sort of mid-boss, this Goliath flyer. He's going to buff up and use both pod programs, and then while he's waiting for the pod programs to get off cooldown, he's just going to spam heavy attacks. And then once the cooldowns are done, another 2 pod programs will finish off the Goliath flyer here.
Enemy aerial unit destroyed. Reverting back to
Pretty simple.
Wait, I'm still picking up a large enemy presence.
Didn't I kill
Not
them
really
already?
anything that can go wrong.
If it's that big, we should be able to see it.
And since you now have the resilience chip equipped, you can even take a hit or 2 without it interrupting your pod program or your heavy attacks or your pod fire. Ice just taking a hit there, and then you saw it didn't not affecting his attack animations at all.
Crap! It's blocking close-range attacks with EMP blasts.
Very, very
Gotta
useful
find
chip.
another way to damage it.
2B, Command is attempting to launch a satellite laser strike on your target, but the enemy's electromagnetic camouflage is making it impossible to aim. We need you to find the emitter and take it out.
Oh, is that all?
I know, but it's the only way.
EMP generator target confirmed. Marking on map. Proposal. Destroy the generator quickly.
Oh yeah, and if I didn't mention before, we do pause to skip cutscenes. So just spam, or not spam, but press start and then just spam A. Or alternatively, you can hold down B in order to skip the cutscene. Holding B is slower, but there are points where we will self-destruct right before a cutscene, and if you self-destruct right before the cutscene, you cannot pause, so you are forced to skip it by holding B. So sometimes you might see runners pause just you know, frames before the cutscene actually starts. So that's what's going on there with the pausing. Is on the first shield generator right here. He has to take out both of these nodes before the generator rotates. Looks like he got the first 2 in time. If you are a bit slow, there's a chance that the core will rotate 180 degrees instead of 90 degrees, so the last 2 will remain out of your reach for 1 or 2 rotations. It can be very annoying, so you really have to have your timing down on these shield generators here. You have to know when when to start moving over to the second one. You see there on Ice's screen, he was not quite fast enough.
I'm the commanding officer, 4B. Don't worry, we'll take it
And
from
getting trolled here. Exactly what I was talking about. Sometimes you just get unlucky. Trolling him again. Incredibly unfortunate. Oh my god, this is one of the worst that I've seen. Holy moly.
We've got mortars lining the shoreline here. All the EMP shielding in the world won't help against close-range mortar fire.
Got it.
Ice may be a bit tilted from that. I know I would be. Getting 3 bad rotations like that is
I'll help aim.
not good.
This thing's armor is too thick. We need more firepower.
2B.
Yeah, at this point, those shield generators are the only place where you can lose time,
That's
so...
right. Lay down some fire in its stupid mouth.
So now we have to shoot 3 of these mortars, or whatever they are, into Bruin's mouth. After the first one, you can just spam the button. No problem.
That enormous machine is an ancient weapon.
And then some more auto-scrolling before we fight the last 2 shield generators, which are basically the same as the first one, except the center core only takes 1 pod program instead of 2. So they can, if they wish, they can take things a bit safer by just using pod fire and light attacks on the first node, and then using the pod program on the second node, just to make sure that it is dead before the generator rotates.
What? Please, 2B. This is gonna work.
S is leaving the front lines. Proposal: 9S should be reported to command as a deserter.
No! He has a plan. Just hold on.
I'm going to see if we can use those missiles back on the shore. But I need you to destroy the EMP unit on that thing's back. Otherwise, they're just going to go off course.
On.
So a few spawns coming up here on Unity's screen where he could use the heavy attack instead of the light attack. Doesn't make any difference time-wise. Just a chance to actually use it. So the second shield generator looks like he left the first node a little too soon. No way he's going to make that cycle. So he's probably going to have to take an extra rotation here. If he can take this one out, a bit of spaghetti going on. Does manage to take it out. Now he should be fine to take out the last 2. Looks like his pod fire angle just a tiny bit off. Does manage to get the last one before it becomes untargetable. Having to use 2 pod programs there because his buffs ran out. No problem. Still pretty sizable lead over Ice here. Ice uses any pod programs at this point now. Basically same deal as Unity, just having to wait out an extra rotation because he didn't make the cycle in the first one. Should be able to take out the last one before it rotates. Still had his buff, so only took 1 pod program for him. Staying on top of your melee and range buffs is pretty important, especially in some of the longer boss fights where you don't necessarily want to use the buffs too often. You basically only want to use them if, you know, that 2-second time loss from menuing, if the buffs are actually going to save you time. And even then, you would want to buff right as they are about to run out. You know, you don't want to buff when they still have like half their length left. But Unity on the last generator here, this camera angle is a bit wonky. I know this is the one that I have the most trouble with, just due to how weird the camera angle is. The angle that you think you need to press on the joystick, it's actually a little different. So it looks like around 8:25 for the ending of Karun. For Unity, we'll see what Ice's timer is at when that cutscene starts.
2B to bunker. Come in. Over.
Operator to 2B?
Ice having some
2B,
trouble
are
with
you
these
all right?
generators
Running
here.
system diagnostics. Core functionality appears intact.
Unity doing some pod spins and
Never
plunging,
mind that. I need a
voiding
status
out to
report.
respawn
Roger that. In regards to the giant machines
farther
that
up on the
shore,
bridge,
it
which is
ceased its
closer to where he
resistance
needs
8
to
hours
go.
ago following your missile strike.
8 hours?
However,
Yeah,
the
so
EMP
looks
strike
like
knocked out
Unity
comms all across the region.
Unity has
We're having
about,
trouble getting them back online,
what,
which means data uploading is
70-second lead
currently
here.
unavailable in some areas.
Where's 9S?
Yeah, about that. We picked up a faint black box reading,
Unity
but
did
wasn't
mention
strong
that
enough to
his
lock down
late
his
game
position.
is
You
weaker
found
than his
something.
early
That means he
game.
must be alive. Put
So
in a
if
request
Ice
to the
plays
commander
well,
for immediate approval to begin a search.
he could definitely
Actually,
still
the
catch
commander
up.
has already ordered us to prioritize
The only thing
tracking down
is there
surviving Yorha
is
members. If you
almost
find
no
9S,
chance of Unity dying on a boss fight since he
Will
did
do.
buy
To be
defensive
out.
buffs. Without defensive buffs, pretty much all the bosses can kill you in 2 hits,
I need you to scan for
and
any
they can
nearby
hit
black
you
box signals.
twice in succession very quickly. But with
Scanning
the
complete. No
defensive
signals
buffs,
detected. However, a
not
dynamic
really
scanner
any
is
chance of
required for
dying.
detection of weaker
You'd have to have
signals.
incredibly
Never
slow
heard.
reaction
Said
times.
dynamic scanner may
But
be located in the
Unity
resistance
there,
camp.
clipping out
Proposal.
of the sewers
Further information
and
should be
plunging
obtained.
down to this elevator, it saves about 15 seconds over going the intended route all the way through the sewers and out, and then plunging down into the city ruins
This
tunnel.
area is composed of crystallized silicon and carbon.
We'll see Ice
With the
do it as well here.
It is unlikely the Yorha units came this far on their own. Hypothesis: the enemy must have placed them here deliberately.
Looks like Ice not doing the faster version of what we call Copy City Clip. Looks like he's going for the older version. It's a lot easier to clip out in this corner than it is the one that we saw Unity clip out at. It still is faster than taking the intended route for sure. Definitely can be a good race strategy if you're not well practiced at that clip in the faster location.
I seek to learn and adopt all facets of humanity.
So Adam talks for a long time before the boss fight actually starts here, so Unity clipping out of bounds by that cube to come back here and bring the elevator back up.
Prioritize search for 9S.
And then when Adam says only then, you can enter the elevator to interrupt that dialogue and cancel it out with the dialogue between the pod and 2B. So it's probably around like a 45-second time save or so
Let us embrace
by
death.
skipping that last phase of Adam's dialogue. Icefire trying to get a good lineup here. Not getting the plunge. There we go. Still had the angle correct though, so you actually have a bit of time to line that up before you actually start losing time there because you're waiting for a specific point of Adam's dialogue to actually enter the elevator. But Unity now on Adam proper. taking out the first phase pretty quickly. You just have to damage it down to a certain threshold, and then you're just waiting on dialogue to finish. And the second part looks like Adam being very, very nice, not doing any of his weird like teleporting attacks, staying pretty still. Very quick phase 2.
This is 2B. Patch me through to the commander.
Oh, hey, 2B.
So now Unity is going to.
Just
Oh,
a second here.
2B.
he was going
Good
for
job
a
destroying
dialogue
that
cancel
machine.
there to
Upon
cancel
further analysis,
this
we learned that the
commander
machine,
dialogue.
codenamed Adam, was responsible for managing half of their entire network.
Since we
A
can't
disruption
check
of
the
this magnitude to their
transporters during
network
this
should weaken the
dialogue,
machine significantly.
we have to.
What's going to happen
If this
tonight
dialogue
is-
does play,
They'll undergo a
Unity
full
has
overhaul
to
up here.
just make his way
Assume
towards
we
the
don't
factory
encounter any
and check
problems.
this
We're planning
teleporter
to
that's
partner him
near
with
the
you
bridge
again.
here.
Thank you.
But we can
In the
open
meantime,
the dialogue
I have another mission for you.
with the
I've mailed you the
NPC
briefing. Go ahead and
that's
take a look.
right near Anemone, and we can use that to cancel this dialogue completely, and then we can check the mail at the resistance camp in order to start this dialogue that's about to start on, for Unity between 2B and Pascal.
Proposal.
So since he picked it up by the highway bridge here, he's going to have to wait a bit longer for Pascal to actually spawn outside of the factory.
Oh, hello, 2B. Do you need something?
I need to know if you've seen any new trends or behaviors.
Looks like Ice did get the dialogue cancel. He's going to stop here at
2 days
Devla
ago,
and
I was
Popola and
contacted
buy
by
some
some
skill
machines that
salves.
disconnected
He's going to
themselves
use
from the network.
those
They
later
wanted to
on
discuss the peace treaty.
on the final boss fight with
Apparently,
Eve.
they're seeking to form an alliance of some kind with
So you
all
saw
the
Ice there
If
checking
that's
the
what
mail
they
at the
want,
resistance
why don't they
camp.
move in?
So by the time he
Believe
gets to
they're
factory,
working on
Pascal is
building a
already going
colony
to be
of their
there.
You don't
Unity,
say.
on the other hand, is going to have
Apparently,
to
it's
wait a
located
bit
in the
longer for
abandoned
this dialogue
factory.
to end
I can give you the
before
coordinates
Pascal
if
will
you'd like.
actually spawn.
Please.
I was
Since he
actually
is here
planning to go speak
sooner,
with them myself,
there
you
is
know.
a small
Maybe we can meet
optimization
up over
where
there?
Sounds good.
you self-destruct as 2B.
Target location data updated.
Yeah, okay. So he's going to self-destruct here. After you self-destruct and 2B gets up, she will start sort of a stumbling walk that will last for a good like 10 seconds or so. That is actually faster than the slow walk that you're forced into during these dialogue scenes. So self-destructing actually saves some time there. And then Unity doing the upskirt strats to have 2B swat the camera away. When that movement she does when she walks forward after swatting the camera is also slightly faster than the slow walk animation. And now Unity has to wait for this machine to walk all the way to the elevator and open it for him. There's no way to skip this or speed this up that we know of. We just have to wait. At this point, Unity still about 70 seconds ahead.
This all seems pretty shady if you ask me.
So why are you still here?
Almost 70 seconds, 68 or so.
It's my duty to see this through to the end.
Factory does have quite a few out of bounds clips here. And the last one is pretty complicated, very easy to mess up, and if you mess it up, you basically lose probably around 40 or 50 seconds because you have to take the intended route instead. So we'll see what happens.
Hello. My name is Pascal.
Yeah, Unity definitely.
To discuss
I'm almost positive he's well ahead of PB at this point. Of course, all depends on this factory coming up.
That's right. This is shady.
So in this room here, normally what you have to do is kill a certain amount of these Mook robots before the elevator will open.
2B to bunker.
Luckily, we can do what's called a heavy hold, where you just walk forward and hold down the heavy attack button, and 2B will do this thrusting sword attack. Useful in a lot of situations. It's what we use. It's what Unity used to clip out of the sewers. It's an attack that has a lot of. It covers a lot of distance very quickly. Very useful for flipping out of bounds. Unity having some trouble here. Pascal getting stuck on these enemy robots. What we usually do there is we use pod slow-mo. So after voiding out, those robots despawn and then respawn. So if you use slow-mo there, it will actually prevent them from getting close enough to you to block Pascal. And then Unity doing some very specific movement here to clip out of bounds. And by doing this, it will unlock the elevator that we arrived in. So we can take that back to the room that we came from. Looks like Ice having some trouble here killing a required amount of enemies. Not sure what's going on there. That's interesting. So this is the complicated part. You have to clip out of bounds right there, do a plunge towards the outside of this silo here. And what we want to have happen is we hit a trigger that's right outside of these doors, and then actually void out and respawn back up top before landing. So it looks like Unity getting its second try. After getting that, we can just plunge down here right outside of the elevator room to go to the factory boss. Big time save there. Skips a lot of factory and some very dangerous sections. If you're familiar with the crusher sections in the factory, those will one-hit kill you, and their hitboxes are kind of wonky, so definitely a good idea to avoid those. Also saves a ton of time. So yeah, looks like Unity is on very good pace here. Ice coming up to the I guess what we call deep factory skip, getting the out of bounds first try, and then plunging down to the bottom. Has to jump here, gets the trigger and voids out. So Ice gaining a bit of time on Unity here, since he was able to get that first try.
Supply detected within this factory. Proposal: energy source should be destroyed.
9S, that Goliath we just encountered.
I got it.
So it looks like this is going to come down to good movement and the boss rush.
Hang in there, 2B. 90%. 92. 95. 98.
So Unity just getting some height and then plunging into this bridge. And you can just kind of float up here. You don't have to deal with evading Soshi's attacks.
I just shut down the electrical grid.
Enemy shield deactivated.
So now that the power's out, he's just going to buff up and just spam damage glitch. Spam damage glitches, rather. Ideally, you would want Soshi to only do one attack here. Of course, his attacks are random that he chooses. Sometimes you just get a bit unlucky. Looks like only doing one attack. Oh no, sending out the exploding drones there. So two cycles Soshi, not too bad. Did have a little bit of trouble getting the very last hit on him to start the cutscene. And it's really small stuff like that. That is Ice's only hope to catch up. So now Ice beginning the fight here. Using slow-mo. Oh, messing up his slow-mo combat there. Accidentally using a laser. Might have to deal with a 2-cycle Soshi. Yep. Should be good from here though. Yeah. And Unity making his way out of factory, going the same route that you saw in Prologue, doing those 2 same out-of-bounds clips.
Wow, that was certainly something. I had no idea such a vast space existed beneath the abandoned factory. I need to return and investigate as soon as possible. When I do, perhaps you'd be willing to join me?
No thanks. I'm heading back to the Resistance camp. What about you?
Oh, I'll probably wander back to the village. I have plenty on my plate there.
I see.
Unity definitely on very good pace here. I'd say
again? I'm not
I'd say
receiving.
possibly 130 pace. His PB is a 132.04. So definitely looks to be
Let's move.
maybe even over a minute ahead at this point.
Why are their numbers increasing like this?
Cause unknown.
Try
A little
contacting
bit
the
of,
via
I
laser
guess,
relay
just
system.
inexperience here with these, with this movement and like the plunge angles there. But Unities have to really gonna make some mistakes here for Ice to have any chance of catching up.
You reach. Good.
So Unity on the side-scrolling section here. These bipeds with the shields can be kind of annoying. They have different death animations, and I know at least one of the death animations is very, very slow. Kind of blocks you. Yeah, the one that Unity just got right there is the slow one. Prevents you from hitting some of the other ones with the damage glitches. And then, of course, trying to jump over him takes time. And there's a good chance that if you try and jump over it, you just jump into a whirly arms stubby. So taking those out and then taking out just the mini boss there.
You again?
And now coming up to Bokushi, this water is electrified, so it will damage you. Luckily, you can stand in it for quite a long time before it damages you the next time, so luckily we can just go straight in there and wail on them without having to worry about any sort of shock protection or anything like that. Wow, gets the explosive drones on Bokushi as well as Soshi. And then once this suction attack starts there, you'll see Unity self-destruct. Just to take out some more robots, get some more experience.
I'm fine. Let's take this bastard down.
Now he is going to go over to this hill here, this incline, so that the core follows behind him, which makes it a lot easier to hit with spinning swords. If you don't bring it up the hill here, it's sort of a bit too far above you to actually just spam damage glitches on. So by bringing it over to the hill, makes it very, very consistent.
They're still coming? What do we do?
Ice gets an attack as well after Bokushi gets down the threshold.
Our village is under.
Ideally, he would want Bokushi to start doing that suction attack as soon as possible.
Shit.
Ice not able to get the self-destruct either. Or, he was not able to get the self-destruct. Sorry, Unity did get it. So there's definitely no way for Ice to reach level 20. He might not even reach level 19. I'm not sure. He probably will. Having trouble with Core 1 here brought it into sort of a really unfortunate spot.
Damn it! They're here too!
9S! It's
the machines
Unity
on the
just
network
needs
have
to
gone berserk.
take out
Sealed
just
off
these
the
machines
exits
here,
and are trying to hold them off, but with these weapons,
and
there's
then
only so
he
much we can
will
do.
Let's take these
start
guys out
the
first.
Core 2 fight. You can actually hit this thing when it's in the air above you, even though it looks like you can't. The hitbox is really, really big. So it looks like, oh, unfortunately the core landing on top of Pascal's fence there. It's going to cost him a little bit of time. Still has a very healthy lead, though.
It's gotta be.
If we destroy this presiding unit, will it stop the rest?
Most likely, yes.
Pod, I need you to locate Eve's current position.
Location has been detected and placed on map.
We'll take care of Eve.
You just worry about keeping the village
And then
safe,
Ice
okay?
here
Do
on
be
these
careful.
machines. Making good use of slow-mo here. Ice's combat is very good. So now that Unity is on Eve here, Eve has 4 phases. This first phase, just going to throw as much damage as possible. Once Eve gets to about half health, he's going to want to start using slow-mo. Unity not using slow-mo, so Eve did the attack that we, as you can probably guess, called platforms. Loses a lot of time because you have to chase Eve all the way up. The strat here is once Eve gets to about half health, we start using slow-mo just to prevent him from using this attack.
Alert. Massive energy signature detected.
What is it?
The energy seems to be coming from a large number of linked machine life forms.
So now for phase
He's
2,
absorbing the
Eve
life
is going
force
to
of whatever's
regenerate,
left in the network.
and then we're going to need to have 9S hack him, so we have to wait for that. Just
We'll never get anywhere like this.
buff up
I'm going to try
and
hacking into Eve and
spam
shutting it
damage
down.
glitches.
Back me up, 2B.
Oh, Ice taking a death on Eve.
Enemy unit cut off from network functionality.
Very, very unfortunate. I actually know that feeling. Eve punches. He hits you twice in very quick succession there, so your reactions do have to be on point to avoid getting killed by that if you're not using defensive buffs. So on Eve phase 3 for Unity, he is just going to use these lasers on Eve. Try and get close enough to him in the air to hit him with some aerial attacks and plunges. Then we'll see if he goes for self-destruct strats or not. No, choosing to charge up another. I'm not sure what he's doing, to be honest. So once Eve's health is to the right around the left side of the L, you can actually use self-destruct on him, and it will finish off this phase.
Alert. NFCS destroyed. Close range combat no longer operable.
And then the last phase, the only thing that we have access to is just pod fire, so he's just going to use his use the pod fire with the range buff, and just hope that Eve stays relatively close, because once you deal enough damage, you have to get close enough to Eve before the cutscene will play. So just hope that he is nice. Accidentally switching pods there, kind of a common thing. There we go.
Detached from the network.
So
It's okay.
looks like what, around a 131, 40,
From the bunker.
42. Congratulations to Unity on a PB.
Upload this
About a
today.
20-second
Bunker.
PB.
So,
Wins the race, 20-second PB. Congratulations to him. Yeah, 43.
please, 2B.
Nice.
I want you to do this for me.
So yeah, good run from.
Alert. FFCS destroyed.
Let me actually turn that down a little. There we go.
I must have been corrupted when Eve
Good,
detached from the network.
good run from Unity.
No.
He was on pretty good pace. Eve
I can
3
always reload my backup
was a
data
little
from the
slow.
bunker.
He did
But you'll
lose
lose
maybe 20
you,
or 30
the
seconds
you that
there, but
exists at this very moment.
Guess so.
easy time save for next run.
Upload this corrupted data to the bunker. So
9S.
And congratulations, Unity.
Thank you very much.
Congrats on PB as well as the race win. Any thoughts on your run or the race?
Oh god. I got platforms.
Yeah.
Which is cool. That's like plus 10 seconds at least. The core landed on the fence, which I shot myself at, but then it was low anyway, so it was all good. What else?
There was something. I don't remember what.
There was something stupid. Oh, Pascal in Mooks didn't go to the elevator for like 10 seconds, 15 seconds.
Pascal got blocked, yeah.
Stupid.
Also, you also needed 2 tries to get the trigger void out in factory.
I did.
Not a huge deal.
Also, Grin,
Oh.
I missed my first shot, and it dropped my input entirely. And I had another issue where it dropped my input, and I don't know where it was, but it cost me like 10 seconds or something.
Brutal.
I can't remember. It was decent overall, I guess.
That's fine. 20-second PB is good.
I can do better. Oh, and I didn't do the skip after Grin, the dialogue skip, so I had to use like old strats or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah. That's right.
I don't know how much slower that was, but
it's not. I actually don't know. I see Fullest was the last person to type in chat, so he probably knows.
Not a clue.
But so you will move on to face Marbles in your next race. Thoughts on that one?
Do I have to?
So you're going to go on to face Marbles in Winners Round 2. Ice is not done yet. He will be racing Tech Theist in Losers Round 1. Of course, the winner of Tech Theist and Icefire will have to face Canaris in Losers Round 2. So,
tough competition.
I'm definitely rooting for the underdog in that matchup against Canaris, whoever it may be.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to watch. See how those things get.
Yeah. But yeah, so the winner of you and Marbles will go up against Fullest, and the loser will go up against Mytherium.
All right, cool.
So we got some good matches coming up. Anything else that you want to mention?
Not really, no. Thanks for doing the commentary. Thanks for Speed Gaming too for setting this up.
Yeah, big shout outs to Speed Gaming for hosting all of our tournament races here. The community really does appreciate it. So it looks like as of right now, we don't have any more matches scheduled for like broadcasts. We don't have any specific times coming up. But you can check out the bracket at tourney.nierspeedrun.com. And of course, you can follow Icefire and Unity. If you're interested in running this game, you can join the Discord server at discord.nierspeedrun.com. A lot of resources on there and people to answer questions and all that stuff. So as far as tournament status, right now we're done with round 1. We have one more match between Marbles and Unity in Winners Round 2. And we have one more Losers Round 1 match. So we got about 12 races or so left. So it's coming down to the end. Pretty much all these races from now on should be pretty close. But that's it for me. Again, thanks. Congrats to Unity on PB and winning the race. But thanks to him and Icefire for racing. And thanks for speed gaming, and thank you for watching.